More analysis of these talks in Russia. Our international affairs editor, Philip Turle, joins us here in the studio. Hello, Philip.
Hi, Charlie.
Now, Donald Trump has made it clear he wants this war over, and he wants it over fast. But Ukraine and Russia, neither side seems willing to budge on their key terms. So how low or high should our expectations be today?
Well, I think if one side has budged, it's certainly the Ukrainian side. They seem to be more open to the idea of some kind of peace deal based on the freezing of the current front line. What they don't want to do, as Fraser Jackson was just telling us, is to hand over territory, about 20% of territory in the Donbass region, that is still under Ukrainian control as part of that peace deal. That's something that Volodymyr Zelensky has said it is definitely a red line. And if you talk to people in Ukraine themselves, they say they do not want Donbass to be handed over to the Russians, as it is an integral part of Ukraine. So that is likely to be the stumbling block. I think there's going to be another stumbling block, and that is the fact that basically it whittles down to that Russia doesn't really want a peace deal right now. It appears it's got more to gain on the ground. It's trying to buy time, and he's just playing. Vladimir Putin is just playing along with the United States by saying, well, yes, come up with another peace agreement, and then refusing it. And I think what we are looking at today is not whether or not Russia is going to refuse this peace deal. It's the reaction from the United States, from Steve Witkoff. How is he going to present this to Vladimir Putin? We don't know what the details of this peace agreement are. All we know is that it was whittled down from 28 points to 19. It's been given a sort of thumbs up by the Ukrainians, but we don't know the fine detail. So how is this going to be presented to Vladimir Putin? Is it going to be, okay, this is a take it or leave it deal. You've got to sign it now, and we've got to end the war in Ukraine. Otherwise, there will be increased sanctions against Russia, and we will provide weapons to Ukraine, which will then make the situation on the ground much more difficult for the Russians? Or will Steve Witkoff say, okay, you don't want this deal, we'll go back to Washington, we'll try to work out something else, and we'll come back and see you again, and Vladimir Putin then will try to make more inroads on the ground and seize more areas of Ukraine. And looking at the ground, we just had in the last few hours the Russians who've been saying that they've captured areas of Ukraine, including Pokrovsk in the east of the country and Vovchansk in the northeast of the country. These have both been dismissed by Ukraine as not true, but still shows that Russia believes it's got the upper hand when it comes to capturing territory.
Now, it really did seem like the U.S. had this idea that negotiations over the future of Ukraine could be exclusively between the U.S. and Russia. And Europe has really rallied to make it clear that that is not acceptable. Can you tell us more about the European effort here to not be cut out of the process?
Well, I think Europe is suffering from the fact now, and it realizes that it's for years didn't invest enough in its military backup. So it's not really a major player in the Ukraine deal. What Europe says, though, is that it's much closer to Ukraine and has more to lose. If Russia gets hold of Ukraine, there's nothing to stop it from launching an attack against another European country afterwards. That's why Europe wants to be at the negotiating table. Emmanuel Macron yesterday in Paris with Volodymyr Zelensky said no peace deal can be worked out without the Europeans being at the negotiating table, Ukraine being at the negotiating table with the Russians, and it's up to Ukraine to decide whether or not it wants to hand over territory and what territory to the Russians to reach that peace agreement. Volodymyr Zelensky is in Ireland today, where he's received more funds to boost Ukraine's military effort on the ground. But when push comes to shove, you have three different negotiations taking place. You have the ones in the United States between the Ukrainians and the US. Then you have the ones in Moscow between the Russians and the Americans. And then you have these discussions taking place in Europe between Volodymyr Zelensky yesterday in France and today in Ireland. All of those need to be put together to come up with some concrete proposal that the Russians will then be able to accept.
Mm-hmm. We'll be hearing from NATO's Secretary General later today as well. So Europe making sure they stay a part of this story. Philip Turle, International Affairs Editor, thank you so much for joining us.